Welcome, everyone. I'm Erin Handel, co-founder of BankersHub, and I would like to welcome you to today's webcast on experiential innovation for bankers. So here's the plan for the next 90 minutes. Our presenter will take us through the issues, and we'll take your questions at the end of the presentation. However, please feel free to send questions as they occur to you throughout the presentation by going to the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar dashboard and just simply type your questions into us. Now, let me introduce our speaker today. Michael Ruckman is the founder, president, and CEO of Senteo. And during his career, Michael has worked both as a banker and as a consultant for retail banks in more than 30 countries around the world. He has delivered a wide variety of successful projects ranging from business strategy to the launch of fully transformed retail institutions. Michael is known for his experience in retail bank management, distribution network development, alternative channel rollouts, sales development, alliances and ventures, systems implementation, and corporate culture development. I know you will enjoy Michael's talk today because he truly believes in and lives this topic, and his passion for innovation is inspiring. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you everyone for taking the time today. What I wanted to share were a couple of ideas on loyalty and quality of customer relationships for bankers. This is something that we've been working with banks on for the last 20 years around the world, and it seems to be a topic that is finally coming to a head as bankers begin to understand that the quality of the relationship has a direct tie to loyalty and a direct tie to the financial performance of each customer segment. One of the things that I like to talk about is the way that customers view their relationships with their banks. And unfortunately, if we do a survey of the research that's available on the market, most customers really don't feel that great about the relationship that they have with their bank. And in most cases, they don't feel that their bank understands their needs. So just an interesting statistic, this was out of a Deloitte study that was done in 2009, and the numbers aren't any different today. But in this study, only 36% of consumers surveyed were satisfied that their primary bank understood their needs. And when it went to major life events, such as getting married or having a child or nearing retirement, that number went down to only 18% of people that would say that their bank understood their needs. And I think there's been a shift in banking over the last kind of 10 to 15 years where banks have kind of forgotten a little bit of what we need to do on the front end in terms of understanding what customers need and helping them to achieve the goals, desires, needs that they have in their life. And lately, there have been a number of new indicators popping up that are supposed to measure loyalty. And one of the most popular ones is Net Promoter Score. There are others, the J.D. Power's Customer Satisfaction Survey, there's Net Advocacy Rating, and so on. And these different methodologies are all interesting in some way or another. However, most of them are measuring historic performance and the way a customer feels about the things that they've experienced so far in that relationship with their bank. So while I may answer that, yes, I'm satisfied with the product that I own, or yes, I might recommend this to other people, or yes, I might buy this again, that's based on what I know today and the experiences that I've had up to today. It doesn't necessarily account for my future behavior if I'm presented with a new offer, a better offer, a more convenient offer, a cheaper offer tomorrow. So again, all of these indicators are good at judging my behavior or how I might behave in the current moment, but they're not necessarily that great at judging how I would behave or how I would react to other offers in the future. And I often take this back to the analogy of a marriage. If a customer has a marriage where they're engaged, fulfilled, and satisfied in that relationship, they're less likely to be sensitive to other offers that might present themselves in work or at a party or in day-to-day life. However, if that person isn't engaged and satisfied and happy in their marriage, they might be more sensitive to other offers that might present themselves in day-to-day activities. And this same thing applies to a banking relationship. If I'm happy and engaged in that relationship and I feel the value, then I'm less likely to be sensitive to other offers that might come my way. However, if I'm unhappy or unfulfilled in that relationship, I'm much more likely to consider those other offers that pop up. Now, one of the things that we've done over the past 6-7 years is we started dividing retention and loyalty into two different types of behaviors. Now, customer retention is something that, from a bank standpoint, is really about eliminating the reasons why somebody might leave our bank. So making sure that things are okay when it comes to product usage, the process of renewal, problem resolution, things like that. Whereas loyalty really is a behavior from the customer side, and the bank doesn't have much control over that. The only thing a bank can really do is try to build reasons why a customer might stay. Unfortunately, customers decide who they're going to be loyal to, and in most cases that's a very emotional decision. So banks can try to build reasons why a customer would stay, but probably to add another level of detail here, I'll just separate this rational and emotional in a different view. So on the rational side, the things that would cause me to be satisfied with my relationship with my bank would be the process of acquisition. Is it easy to acquire a new product from my bank? Is it easy to renew that product? Is the quality of usage as promised? If there's a problem, is it resolved efficiently? This is what we refer to as the contractual relationship. It's the contract. I pay a fee for a service that was promised to me. If that service is delivered as promised, I'm likely to be satisfied. I might buy that product again. I might refer it to others. But the emotional side of that relationship is something completely different. Here we start dealing with my emotions during interactions with the bank, my feelings about the products that I own and the value that they bring in my day-to-day life, my feelings about the ongoing relationship with the bank, and my feelings about my future and my personal development as a result of that relationship. Is there something that I get out of that relationship that makes me better over time, or is it purely a contractual relationship? And this is going to be very important moving forward, where Net Promoter Score, they might say that the ultimate question is, would you refer this product to somebody that you care about? I say the ultimate question is, can you look back at your relationship with your bank over the past 5 to 10 years and say that your life has gotten better as a result of that relationship? So as with any relationship, if you're not able to say, yes, as a result of that relationship, my life is better, there's some value added, then that relationship will get kind of dull and stagnant over a period of time. So we'll keep going, but we're going to come back to this principle. So on one side, there are activities related to retention. On the other side, these are what we call the loyalty builders. They're creating reasons why customers would stay and creating ongoing value in that relationship over time. So I'm going to move into the concept of experiential innovation. And just to give a tiny bit of background, we've spent the last 18 years working in different countries around the world, probably over 30 countries at last count. And a lot of those countries were emerging markets. And one of the things that we learned about 12, 13 years ago was that it was really easy in emerging markets to be the first to launch the first new product of its kind or the first new channel of its kind and so on. So the first new revolving credit card or the first internet bank or the first mobile bank. It was easy to do that, and that brought a level of competitive advantage and price advantage to whoever launched it for a period of time while the other competitors tried to copy that new functionality, that new channel, that new product, and so on. What we found is as those markets continue to develop, and when we start working in more and more developed markets, the level of difficulty in coming up with that next new disruptive offering or that next new disruptive product or channel is much higher, and the reward that a bank would get in terms of their competitive advantage or their price premium lasts for much shorter duration of time because the competitors are slightly more sophisticated in that more developed market, and they'll copy that functionality faster than they would in the emerging market. So we get to a point very quickly where all banks start to look the same. And if I move into this slide, what we like to do is split things between what we refer to as product and channel innovation and experiential innovation. And if I break that down into kind of what it means, on one side it's what I get. This is that contractual relationship that I mentioned. So I pay a fee for a service. If that service is delivered as promised, I'm likely to be satisfied. I may recommend that product to others. I might buy it again. So the product and channel innovation side is what I get for the fee that I pay. On the experiential innovation side, this is what it means to me. What value does this create in my life? What ongoing value has it created? Is there any progression or development that it brings to me over time? So when we look at these from an innovation standpoint, if I'm looking at product and channel innovation, these are very rational things. However, if I move from incremental improvements to radical changes in those technologies, what I can come up with are disruptive technologies. So a good example of this would be the MP3 player. And this goes back to Clay Christensen and The Innovator's Dilemma, which is a great book written over 20 years ago, where he just defined disruptive technologies as technologies that had the power to completely change a market or an industry. So the MP3 player for the music industry was a great example of a disruptive technology. It completely changed the way that we store and listen to music that we own. Now, if I look at a different trajectory there and look at the experiential innovation, these are much more emotional innovations. Again, this is what it means to me to own these products. It's the emotional value that it creates in my life. So if I move from incremental improvements to radical changes in this emotional realm, I have the power to build disruptive relationships. Now, a good example of a disruptive relationship is Harley-Davidson. Most people do not buy a Harley-Davidson because it's the rational, logical, best choice to purchase. In fact, most Harley-Davidsons break down often. They use a lot of gas. They're loud, and so on. So they're probably not the best rational purchase of a motorcycle, but people have such a disruptive emotional relationship with that brand that they're not really buying the motorcycle, they're buying the lifestyle around that brand. Now, if we're able to combine the rational and the emotional and come up with something that is a disruptive technology coupled with a disruptive relationship, we get to this integrated offer of a disruptive offering. Now, a really good example of this would be Apple with the iPod. So Apple did not invent the disruptive technology, which is the digital music player, the MP3 player. Apple made incremental improvements to the piece of technology. They added a new access channel, which was iTunes, which allowed people to buy legal music versus download pirating music off of Kazaa and Napster and those websites. And they combined that with the disruptive relationship that Apple customers have with the Apple brand. And that created a disruptive offering. Now, that offering, I may be a little bit off on numbers, but to date, I believe that it's more than 400 million iPods that have been sold. And if I'm correct, it's still over 70% market share year on year of overall sales. So Apple sells more iPods, two times more iPods than all other digital music player producers combined in the world. That is the potential power of bringing together the irrational and the emotional into a disruptive offering. Now, as we move forward with this, there's a kind of interesting thing. A few years ago, it's about almost 5 years ago now, we stopped doing surveys with bank customers where we asked them what they wanted from their bank. So I'm sure most bankers have done a survey at some point where they've asked customers, what do you want from your bank? And unfortunately, those surveys really don't deliver actionable insight into how to better design our business to fulfill the requirements of the customer. So if I ask a customer what they want from the bank, usually the answers I get are good service, low price, preferably free, branch next to my home, branch next to my office. These are things that would be very difficult to act on for most customer segments in a bank's customer portfolio. So what we started doing was asking the question a little bit differently. We started saying, what do you hope to get out of your banking relationship over the next 5 to 10 years? And it turned out that about 95% of the questions grouped themselves almost evenly into these three answers: help improving my day-to-day quality of life, help solving problems when they come up, and help realizing my goals and dreams. Now, that for me is actionable insight. If I'm a banker and I understand that my role is to help people improve their day-to-day quality of life, help them to solve problems when they pop up, and help them to realize their goals and dreams, then I can start changing the way that my products are designed. I can change the way that I consult clients and help them to choose the products that will help them to reach their goals or solve their problems. And I can change the way that I interact with clients and add some progression and some continuity to that chain of contacts over time. Now, one of the things that we've looked at often with banks is that the contacts that a person has with a bank are often unrelated and disjointed. So I may have contact with my bank through multiple different channels 6, 7, 8 times a month, but each contact is completely individual and unrelated to the other contacts that I have with my bank. So one of the things that we need to do as bankers is begin to engineer contacts in a way that they have the ability to add more value in the lives of customers. So here I've just created a graph that shows 4 different types of scenarios here. So if I only have individual contacts with customers and they're unrelated, these are usually around completing some kind of task. The timing is immediate. And if I engineer that to be more experiential, if I engineer that individual contact, the result or the effect of that could be mood lifting for the customer. A customer might walk out of the bank branch or leave the website or hang up the phone from the call center and say, wow, that was unique and engaging. It was different from other contacts that I've had with other banks, and as a result, it lifted my mood. Yeah. Now, if we take that a step farther and say that we have the ability to combine multi-contact processes, maybe we're trying to solve a problem with the customer. This might be short-term in terms of timing. It might be about achieving a particular goal or solving the problem. And the effect of experiential engineering in this scenario could be fulfilling. I have achieved something as a result of this collection of contacts that I've had with my bank. And that collection had some progression and some results to it. The next step after that is if we're able to do this on a more medium-term basis, maybe with multiple different types of activities, where I'm able to fulfill desires. So this becomes more progressive. And the effect of the experiential engineering could be delightful at this point, as I'm realizing that I'm having this new added value in my life that I've never really felt from a bank before. And then the ultimate level here is if we're able to do that on an ongoing basis over the course of a relationship, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, potentially even spanning multiple life cycles. From the, moving from a student to a young family man to a mature family man to a retiree and so on, going through these different life stages, if we're able to choreograph these contacts and have the ability to help people realize their goals and dreams in the long term, this has the potential to be life-changing. So where today most banks can only react to the moment, the immediate need, what we need to start doing in the future is looking at our ability to help customers achieve their goals, fulfill their desires, and realize their dreams in the short, medium, and long term. So this adds a new dimension of how we need to interact with customers and a new level of depth in managing customer relationships, because it's no longer just about sales and service. It's about the quality of the relationship that happens outside of the contractual relationship. So I'll keep talking about these, but one of the things that I wanted to illustrate here is what we call the relationship dynamic. So if I'm a new customer walking into a bank, the first things I'm going to experience are the branded communications in that bank. If the branded communications are pleasing enough, maybe from the street or from a television commercial or something like that, I'll make contact with that bank. That contact will happen through a customer environment. Could be physical, could be virtual. I might call a call center. I might walk into a bank branch. I might look at their website. If the initial contact is pleasing and engaging enough, then I'll dive deeper and get to know the offering and the culture of the people that are interacting with me, and only then would I make a decision to buy or not to buy whatever it is they're offering to me. So once I make that purchase, that's when the relationship starts. So unlike other offerings where if I buy my computer or my car, my relationship with the salesperson probably ends at that point. With a bank, making a purchase is the start of that relationship. I'm now signing myself up for ongoing contact with that bank. And there's 2 elements that are going to build retention and loyalty on the other side after I've made that purchase. One of them is the quality of usage that we've talked about. We've talked about the quality or the process of acquisition, quality of usage, problem resolution, and so on. And the next aspect of it is developing the relationship. So when we talk about quality of usage, we're really talking about the functionality that was promised to me in my contractual agreement, how I access that functionality through different channels, and how easy it is for me to use that functionality. After that, we have to look at the relationship development outside of product usage. And the first question that we always ask here is there some mechanism for generating a relevant reason for contact with that customer outside of selling a product or servicing a product? So from the customer's standpoint, is there any relevant reason for contact with my bank outside of purchasing a specific product or using a product that I already own? And this is a dangerous territory, because if there is no relevant reason for contact with your bank outside of buying something from you or using something that I already purchased from you, then there is no relationship outside of the contractual relationship. And this is a problem. So one of the things that we need to do is find ways to interact with customers outside of product usage, outside of product purchase, that are relevant and add value in their life. So one example that I often give, I have a relationship with a bank here in Las Vegas, and after I opened the account with them, they called me about 6 times over the course of 6 months, and the phone call was very much like, hey, Mr. Ruckman, would you like to buy something else from us? Are you happy with what you have from us already? And so on. And my answer every time was, yes, I'm happy, and no, I don't want to buy anything else from you. And I thought about it one day, and I thought, wow, if we mapped the cost of all of those phone calls from an activity-based costing standpoint and looked at the cost for them to have a call center and an auto dialer and software licenses and employees and training and sick leave and vacation and insurance and everything, the cost of calling me 6 times was huge for them, and they got absolutely no result out of that. Whereas if they had called me and said, hey, Mr. Ruckman, we looked in your account. It looks like you have some rental real estate, and we have events for people like you once a quarter where we invite professionals from our local community to talk about tax planning for investment properties or dealing with deadbeat tenants or protecting your assets from a legal standpoint and so on. They would have had me from the first moment. They could have invited me to an event like that. It wouldn't have cost them that much. They've already got the branch real estate where they could hold the event. But what would have been interesting is it would have been a very relevant reason for contact, and I may have opened up in that venue and given them more information about how they could offer me other things from their bank. So the first step, and one of the most key moments here in developing a relationship outside of the contractual relationship, is coming up with relevant reasons for contact. And this is more than just wishing customers happy birthday or sending them a Christmas card. It's much more than that, and it requires a separate set of processes and measures for relationship management. And it's not just a piece of technology. It is a separate set of processes and measures and a team and so on that is managing day-to-day, face-to-face relationships with customers. So I'll move on. The next level of relationship development here is what we refer to as trust and security. So any one of these relevant contacts that we're talking about must be from a trustworthy and reliable source of information. So just to give a quick example, if my bank wants to give me advice on how to raise my children, I'm probably not going to value that source of information. However, if my bank wants to give me advice on how to plan and save for my children's education, that is very relevant, and it is a trustworthy and reliable source of that kind of guidance. So that would make sense. So this is the second wave of guidance on relevant contacts with customers outside of product usage. The third level is, can we create a sense of belonging? So do I feel like I belong to a specific group of people? Are there subgroups inside of the bank customer base that I might be included in? For example, if they invited me to a workshop with other people who own investment real estate. And I'll give some examples of this in the future, or in a few minutes. The first level, or the next level here is what we call esteem and status. Do I feel good about the relationship with my bank? Do I feel like I'm happy about that? Am I ready to tell people about it even? Or is it something that I don't really feel the increased status or esteem as a result of that relationship? And the last level of what we call relationship development or the relationship dynamic is growth and transformation. So is there some progression, is there some growth or transformation in my life as a result of this relationship? So this goes back to the question that I gave earlier, which is, can I look back at my banking relationship and state that, yes, as a result of my relationship with my bank, my life has gotten better over the last 5 to 10 years. That is going to be the true test of relationship strength when we look at this. So on one side, we end up with promises during the purchase process of buying a new product with the bank. On the other side is where we have the follow-through from the bank standpoint. That follow-through could be purely contractual, or it may have the additional relationship development component, which is something that all banks need if they're going to build loyal customer relationships. On one side, we're attracting new customers. On the other side is where we have the ability to create this commitment, this loyalty amongst the customer base. And that only comes through developing a relationship, that emotional side. On one side, we have the ability to surprise people with individual contacts that are unique and engaging. On the other side, if we're able to do that on a consistent basis, we have the ability to build customer delight. And delight is something that's it's a very strong influencer on loyalty. If I am consistently surprised, engaged, delighted with my contacts with your organization, I'm much more likely to be loyal than if I'm not consistently delighted with those contacts. So one of the things that we've found over the years is that the strength of a relationship, how a customer views the strength of the relationship, has the opposite influence on sensitivity to errors or faults in usage. The stronger the relationship, the lower the sensitivity to price. The stronger the relationship, the lower the sensitivity to competitive offerings. And this brings out a very interesting conclusion, which is the stronger a relationship is, the stronger the loyalty is to that bank. Now, it seems simple, but for some reason this gets lost a lot of times, and we forget that the relationship itself has a direct tie to loyalty. Another thing that we've done over the years is we've proven that those customers that rate their relationship strength very high also tend to be more consolidated into one banking relationship. They have more products per customer in that bank. They have higher balances. They're less sensitive to price, and they are less sensitive to competitive offers. So this relationship strength component brings a very new dimension in measuring the strength of relationships. So if we're a banker and we're going to design our business to be good at relationships, we need to first think about how our customer is going to experience that business. A customer will experience the business in the progression moving from purchase to usage to relationship. However, as a bank, we need to design our bank to be good at relationships first. And this, as I said before, this is not about implementing a piece of technology. This is about changing processes, performance indicators, and management models to effectively manage customer relationships and the quality of those relationships. Later, a piece of technology can be implemented to support those processes and performance measures. But until those processes and performance measures are in place, the technology will most likely be useless. So one of the things I often return to when I talk about this is what we call the progression of economic value. And this comes out of a book called The Experience Economy, which was written by Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore in 1999. In 2011, they launched an updated version of it that has quite a few new examples, and amazingly, the concepts are still exactly the same, and the theory is extremely valid for today's market. So one of the things that they did was map the economic evolution in the United States over the last 100 years, and they showed that 100 years ago, the majority of the planet, or the majority of the country, was engaged in extracting commodities from the earth. Then we went through the Industrial Revolution, where we learned how to make goods. We went through the Service Revolution, where we learned how to deliver services, and over the last 12 to 15 years, we've been entering into what we call the experience economy, and that is where we learn to stage experiences, where these experiences in the first stages are used to enhance the offerings of goods and services. But in the end, the experience becomes more valuable to the customer than the good or the service by itself. And the ultimate level of this is when businesses are able to use a collection of experiences over time to guide transformations in the lives of their customers. So this goes exactly back to what we were talking about, the ability over time to add value in a person's life. So if I look at this with the example of Harley-Davidson, I like this Harley-Davidson example because it's just kind of fun. But Harley-Davidson, the commodity would be the metal used to build the motorcycle. The good would be the motorcycle itself. The service would be servicing the motorcycle, repairing, maintenance, and so on. The experience could be customizing that motorcycle to be exactly the way I want it. The transformation is who I become as a result of ownership. Who do I become as a result of my relationship with Harley-Davidson? Now, Harley understands this very well. And while Harley-Davidson was not built on the Senteo methodology, amazingly, they've fulfilled every one of the criteria for this relationship development. And they've started building relevant reasons for contact with their customer base. They've created Harley owners groups that meet on a regular basis. There's membership, which gives a sense of belonging. There's a sense of status and esteem to owning a Harley, and the brand itself is transformational. People that are buying a Harley-Davidson are not buying it because they need a mode of transport. They're buying it because they believe in and buy into the lifestyle that a Harley-Davidson owner has. Harley also understood that they have different customer groups, and they've segmented those groups so they have different events and different groups for women riders, for student riders, for retirees, and so on. So this is a great example of this relationship development progression where they've fulfilled every one of these key elements of relevance, trust and security, belonging, status and esteem, and growth and transformation. Now, Harley is one of these brands that we consider to be one of the strongest in the world in terms of what we call brand integration. People that have bought into Harley have bought into that lifestyle so much that they're even ready to tattoo the Harley-Davidson brand on their bodies. They're able to, or they're willing to brand themselves with the brand of Harley-Davidson because they believe in and have become such a part of that lifestyle. Now, this is just a picture that I throw up all the time for fun, but this should be an interesting goal for banks. What level of lifestyle integration can banks achieve with their customers so that customers would feel the same way about their bank as they would about Harley-Davidson or Nike or Apple or Reebok or so on. And just a fun thing, if you ever want to do it, open up Google Images and type in Harley-Davidson tattoo. There's about 5 million pictures of people that have tattooed their bodies with Harley-Davidson, some version of the Harley-Davidson logo. If you look at others, there are a significant number of Apple tattoos in there. There's some Nike. There's even a Marlboro tattoo that I found one time. But this should be something that should be a key indicator for banks. Banks really have not achieved this level of lifestyle integration, yet at the same time, that banking relationship guarantees ongoing contact for years. So banks really need to take advantage of this and use this to become closer with customers. Now, when we look at the progression of economic value for banks, the commodity would be precious metals, things that are extracted from the earth. The good would be the minted currencies that are used. The service would be when it becomes an intangible activity. I put money in my account and I'm able to take it out on the other side of town through an ATM. I have a loan, I'm able to send payments virtually, and so on and so on. So these become intangible activities. The experience is if we package it up to achieve a particular goal or solve a problem. That could be designed and engineered to be experiential. And if we use a collection of those experiences over time to create change, progression, growth, transformation in the lives of our customers, then that's where we can guide these transformations throughout the course of a relationship. And again, this is separate from product ownership. It's the relationship outside of what is contractual, is what we refer to as the real relationship. Now, if we just look at this step from services to experiences, there's some interesting developmental steps in here. All banks have these services that are there: current accounts, payments, deposits, loans, and so on. They're all services. By themselves, they're kind of boring. If we take those services and package them up to be goal-oriented, the best way to get a new car, the best way to remodel your kitchen, the best way to pay for your child's education, and so on. If we package those up into a collection of different services that are helping people to realize a specific goal or solve a specific problem, that's the first step. Then if we understand that that activity may happen at a point in time that's not immediate, it may happen not only today, but somebody might have a goal to remodel their kitchen in 6 months, or to buy a car in a year's time, or to buy a new home in 2 years. And we can add in a certain amount of planning and advice to help people achieve those goals over time. That's the next step. And the third step after that, or what's the fourth level here, is creating a themed packaged solution. So we can put a theme around that. We did a project years ago where we took just kind of boring unsecured installment loans and packaged them up with advice and different products and discount programs from partners, and we package them up as the vacation package, the package for having a baby, the package for getting married, the package for going for remodeling your kitchen or your house, the package for adult education, and so on. They were fantastically popular products, and yet from a bank standpoint it was the same product that was sold. From a customer standpoint, there was the ability to choose from 5 or 6 different products that were packaged and themed to meet my specific goal. So as we move through these, it turns out that there's a certain number of life events that we can package up bank products for, and those have different directions in which we can expand them. It could be buying a condo, buying a house, buying a vacation home. It could be buying a car, buying a second car, buying a motorcycle, buying a boat. It could be getting married. We had a package that was designed for getting married, and we had a customer walk into a bank branch one time and say, "You have a package for getting married. Do you have one for getting divorced? It's much more costly." So that was kind of a funny moment. As we move on, there's banks that have even taken this to the extreme of repackaging their products for different life stages as well. If I'm buying a car as a student, my needs and the characteristics of my purchase might be very different than if I'm buying a car as a young professional or as a retiree. So taking these products that we have today and packaging them up and theming them for different life stages or different life events allows us to expand the portfolio of the offering to be more interesting for our customers and more relevant in their life, while from an operational standpoint inside of the bank, we're really still offering the same operationally efficient products. So we're going to move on to transformation for a second. And here I always like to tell a little story. If we walk into any bank in the world pretty much right now and say, "I'd like to buy a car in 8 months," what's the answer that we would usually get? Usually that banker would say, "Well, come back in 7 months and we'll get you all set up." And really, customers don't kind of think in that way. They don't always think about their last-minute immediate need. As a customer, I have my needs, wants, desires, and dreams organized into a kind of a vision that I have. It might not always be on paper. They might not always be concrete, but there are certain things that I know I need to do today. There are certain things that I would like to accomplish in the next 3 months to 6 months. There are other things that I really hope to or aspire to complete in the future of the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And then there are other things that are kind of dreams that are way off in the future. I'd like to buy an island. I don't have a concrete plan for how to do that, but at some point, someday, I'd love to live on an island somewhere, and hopefully it would be mine. Who knows? But that has a very different relationship to my life than the things that I need to accomplish today or over the next 6 months or the next 18 months and so on. So in many ways, we can start to organize our products into the ability to not always have to act today, but I can start, for example, saving for my car loan, saving for my car that I'm going to buy in a year. So just an example, if I walked into a bank and said, "I'd like to buy a car in 8 months," and they said, "Okay, let's get you started today. We're going to have you make a payment into a savings account that's exactly the same size as the payment that you're going to make once you have your car loan. And we'll have you make that payment for 8 months into the savings account. And by the time we get to your car loan, 2 really interesting things are going to happen. A, you're going to have a bigger down payment, which means you'll need to finance less. And B, our risk management will have a track record of not only your ability to make that payment, but the fact that you're disciplined in making that payment every month. And as a result, we're going to be able to give you a discount on that loan. So now we've reduced the cost of your loan and we've reduced the amount of your loan, so you're going to save a bunch of money there. But what we're going to do, instead of giving you a lower monthly payment, we're going to ask you to make that same monthly payment that you've been making anyway, and a certain portion of it is going to go to pay down your car loan, and another portion of it is going to go to a savings account for your next car, because guess what? In 3 years you're going to want another car, and we should start talking about that now. So by doing that, I'm not just selling one car loan, I'm locking this person into a relationship where I'm going to help them to have their cars for the rest of their life. And this is something where we can add significant value. The money that's saved from interest paid, as opposed to if I had financed 100% of that car loan, that money that's saved can be diverted to other goals or to a retirement account or so on. So it allows me to open up my discussion with that customer into topics that are much wider and much more valuable than just getting them the car and nothing else. So this is something that adds to this dynamic. And also, as bankers, really what we want to achieve here is we want to have certain products that we use to attract customers, other products that formulate what we call the core relationship that allow us to have a day-to-day contact with that customer and help them to plan for their goals and solving problems and so on. And then we want to get them started on activities where we're able to expand that relationship into multiple different product categories with these kind of hybrid products where we can get somebody started saving for something today, and at some point in the future we can convert that into a loan. Now, no risk management department in a bank is going to allow me to cross-sell 4 or 5 credit products to a customer in the same day, but I can get a customer started on saving for 4 or 5 different goals, and we can make credit decisions on achieving those goals faster at some point in the future. So this allows me to integrate and have a much wider discussion with that customer than if I'm dealing with one topic. Now, this is already happening outside of banks, and there are certain banks that are already picking up on this, but Mint.com is a really great example of the ability to aggregate your entire financial life into one view and see how you're doing. It also allows you to create a budget, see how you're doing on keeping to your budget. It allows you to set goals and save for those goals and see how you're doing and celebrate your success and so on. SmartyPig is another one that allows you to log in, create a list of goals that you want to achieve, set a time frame and a dollar value for achieving that goal, and it automatically moves a savings payment from your current account into their savings account every month. They also created widgets that allow people to integrate with Facebook and Twitter so that you can invite your social network to take part in your savings goals. So instead of buying you a bottle of wine for your birthday, I might contribute $100 to your vacation goal and give you a birthday present that way. Now, these are very interesting examples, but the logical place for this to happen is in that banking relationship. If I'm in a relationship where I can help you to solve your problems, improve your day-to-day quality of life, and achieve your goals and dreams, it's actually fairly simple to sit down with you and say, okay, let's create a list of the things that you need to achieve, and let's create a little family budget here, and let's find some balance between the time frame in achieving these goals, your ability to save, and your ability to use lending products to achieve those goals. And we can create a map of the things that you're trying to achieve. Some of them maybe go straight to a loan, others you've got a savings portion and then a loan, others you might save entirely for. And we can even map that out on some kind of timeline that gives me a relevant reason to call you back every 2, 3, 4 months and say, hey, why don't we get together and have a look at the goal map and see if there's anything we need to change. Maybe we want to go on vacation sooner because it's been a tough year. Maybe the plasma screen or the LCD television can wait for a while. So this gives us a very relevant reason for contact and a very, very concrete roadmap for adding value in the lives of our customers. Now, there are multiple personal financial management tools out there. There are multiple pieces of technology that promise to do this, but without implementing processes, the management structure, and the performance measures in a bank to do this, those pieces of technology are usually rendered useless. So one of the things that we also like to talk about is gamification. So there are aspects of gamifying or making things more fun in financial discipline that can be used. And this is an example. Aaron Dignan wrote a book called Game Frame, and he did a presentation at a large banking conference this year where he talked about it, and he said very concretely, banking isn't fun, getting better is fun. And the whole concept of gaming or gamification is really about achieving mastery and autonomy. And what better way to add value in people's lives than to give them a mechanism that allows them to master their finances and become independent and autonomous and not dependent on so many different things for realizing their goals. So this is an interesting concept. I have a number of presentations on how to gamify financial discipline, but really what bankers need to do is kind of take a decision in the near future as to, are we merely delivering naked services, or are we moving into this realm where we're able to guide transformations and create real value in the lives of our customers? And this is what we refer to as an opportunity gap. And to illustrate that opportunity gap, we have a methodology that we use called the Relationship Strength Score. And one of the components of that Relationship Strength Score is what we call transformational questions, where we ask customers to rate their current banking relationship on a scale of 1 to 5 and their desired banking relationship on a scale of 1 to 5. And I'll read these questions on each side. So the first question, on one extreme we have, my bank offers generic products which are similar to those of other banks, and therefore I make my decision based on price. 61% of people say that their current relationship is like that, meaning that the bank is just like any other bank and they make their decision based on price. On the right-hand side, the other extreme, my bank offers solutions that can be customized to meet my individual needs, and therefore I'm willing to pay a bit more for quality. Now here, 54% of people say that they want this from their bank, but only 19% of people say that they're actually getting it today. So this is what we refer to as the opportunity gap. There's a group of people that are ready to pay for this, and they want it, and they're currently underserved by their banks. The next question, my bank reacts to my request for information on the services they offer, and I decide which products best fit my needs. 60% of people say that their current banking relationship is on that side. On the other side, my bank makes an attempt to understand my personal situation and recommends products that best fit my needs. 55.4% of people want this from their bank, they're ready to pay for it, and only 19% of them are receiving it today. Again, an unrealized opportunity which represents a disparity in what banks are offering and what customers are actually seeking. Now the last one is my favorite. I have little or no contact with someone from my bank outside of using the products that I've purchased. 67% of people feel this from their banks today. However, 56% of people want regular contact with people from their bank, and they would welcome help to plan for their needs and goals. 56% of people are seeking that, only 14% of it are fulfilled. So there's a 40% gap in here between what customers want and what they're getting from their banks. This represents a huge opportunity for those banks that are first movers. And again, this isn't a piece of technology, it's a different way of interacting with customers, broken down into processes, management models, and performance measures. So here, we have to decide where we fit into this new world. Are we purely offering rational product and channel choices to our customers in contractual relationships only? Or do we have the opportunity to build value in the lives of our customers from an emotional standpoint and even create a disruptive offering that would make us more competitive moving forward? From this large banking conference, Richard Branson was another one of the speakers there, and he brought up a really interesting point, which is he said, you know, while many people do a lot of their banking online, he believes that personal interaction has a key place in banking and in business for that matter. So he believes that getting rid of branches would completely be a step in the wrong direction. He believes that the need for personal contact and personal interaction is what's going to bring banking back. And one interesting thing that came out of that conference as well, if we just apply a number of the presentations to our little kind of matrix here of product and channel innovation and experiential innovation, it turned out that most of the presentations and most of the new innovations that were touted by banks were product and channel innovations. And it was only Disney, Richard Branson, and Aaron Dignan who actually moved into the space of disruptive offerings and experiential innovation. So if we want to have loyal relationships with customers, reduce price sensitivity, reduce sensitivity to competitive offers, and so on, we're going to have to move into this area of experiential innovation, meaning adding true value in a person's life outside of the contractual relationship. Now, one of the things I wanted to just communicate, that I know this slide is it has a Russian magazine cover on it. It's also in English on our website. This is a thing that we publish every year called the Customer Experience Index. If you log on to our website, or you can also find it on Amazon, this Customer Experience Index is a study of initial contacts with banks and how pleasing they are. It's based on the Russian market, but there are a number of articles in there that are very, very interesting and apply to any market in the world. Also, we have an online community that we've launched recently about customer experience, relationships, and loyalty. And there's a number of discussion groups in there on experiential innovation, relationship-centric banking, experiential customer environments, experiential branding and communications, and so on. And even though the community is in its infant stages, there's already some really good discussions in there. Videos, a video of this webinar as well as others are in there. There's good content, articles, white papers, things like that. So please have a look at our community, join up and participate. And that's all I have for today, so I'm open to take questions, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Michael. Actually, we do have a couple questions that have come in, and let me also remind folks out there to go to your question tab on the GoToWebinar interface and type any questions that you might have for Michael. The first question that we have is, have you worked with clients who have used MPS, and are you finding that that works along with the Senteo methodology?
Great question. We like NPS for measuring a person's likelihood of purchasing an individual product again, their satisfaction of using that product, or whether they would recommend that product to other people. However, NPS doesn't necessarily account for a lot of the emotional components outside of the contractual relationship. So that was why we started a few years ago developing this relationship strength score methodology, not to replace NPS or net advocacy rating or customer satisfaction, but as an addition to those other methodologies, because we feel it adds a window into the likelihood of maintaining those decisions in the future versus only the current moment in time.
Thanks, Michael. Another question that's come in your experience working with European, Russian banks, have you seen a big difference in that versus American banks in terms of A, what the customers are looking for, and B, what the banks are willing to do in order to please their customers more?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a loaded question, Aaron. We obviously have spent most of the focus of our company working with European banks. We've also done a lot of work in Latin America, and we've done a little bit of work in the U.S. But we have a venture that we're launching in the U.S. which has allowed us to focus group and survey a number of bank customers in different markets in the U.S. What we've found is that the answers in what customers are seeking do not differ that much from country to country. They may be a little bit more pronounced or a little less pronounced based on the level of economic development of the country, if it's an emerging market or a developed market. But what customers are seeking tends to be pretty much the same. Where we find a really big disparity is in how banks are reacting to that information. So in emerging markets, banks are reacting much faster than in the developed markets. The developed markets, the banks have legacy systems, the management models are very siloed, and in many cases, any change to those models takes years, potentially even a decade, to get these banks to move. You know, if you look at a bank like you know, any of the top 10 in the U.S., they've got thousands of branches. They're very decentralized in terms of the way they manage things, and driving that change requires much more effort. Some of the banks that we've done, for example, in Eastern Europe, you know, we got really into modernizing a lot of the banks in Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, and so on, as well as Central Europe, Czech Republic, Poland, and so on. But one of the things that we see over there is that the speed that they're willing to change, for two reasons really. One, because they're new and understanding the market in a different way, and two, because they don't have as much legacy system and management model to replace or transform, but the speed that they're changing is dramatically different. So, for example, we watched one bank in October at a banking conference. A U.S. bank did an entire 40-minute presentation on their mobile banking application, and that mobile banking application had exactly the same functionality that we launched in Russia in 2005. So, you know, with that in mind, unfortunately, the developed markets are moving a little bit slower in this area of experiential innovation, and even in the areas of product and channel innovation than emerging markets.
Great, thanks, Michael. Another question that's come in is, what do you find to be the biggest barriers that you've encountered in turning banks around? Is it the culture? Is it the employees? Is it the management? I imagine it's a combination, but tell us what you found your biggest barrier to be.
Another great question. The biggest barrier that we've found, and this is going to sound funny, the biggest barrier that we've found is lack of transparency in the performance measures. Because what we've found is we can go into banks and say, hey, you should be doing these things, and everybody agrees with us. But in many cases, a lot of the different departments or different people in the management team will have their own goals and their own kind of views of how those things should be implemented. And a lot of times it's very painful to drive a transformation. So what we started doing probably about 7, 8 years ago was one of the first steps that we do is identify all of the sources of what we call customer-centric and relationship-centric performance indicators. Once we create a dashboard of these indicators, then nobody really argues with it anymore because they see that the ultimate goal is to improve the quality of relationships, and by improving the quality of relationships, the financial bottom line of the bank improves. Bad credit goes down, profitability goes up, balances go up, number of products per customer goes up, customer attrition goes down. I mean, all of the different indicators that are there that we call lagging indicators, the ones that I just said, are tied to what we call our customer-centric and relationship-centric current and leading indicators. So once we get those in place, all of the elements of transformation tend to fall into place on their own. So where most people would say, yeah, the culture is the biggest one, or changing customer behavior is the biggest one, for us the biggest first hurdle to get over is identifying the sources of transparent performance indicators that are in this customer-centric, relationship-centric format. Once that is accomplished, everything else kind of falls in line and moves forward smoothly.
Great. Thanks, Michael. We have another great question from the audience. With all the automated channels, what's the best way to start the process with existing customer base that we never get to see because of all of our automated services, mobile, ATM, RDC, et cetera?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I mean, this is something that we ran into a lot in Eastern Europe and looking at the U.S. market as well. So I mean, if we look at the big push in the U.S. market of migrating customers to alternative channels and sometimes even penalizing them for coming to a branch or talking to a teller or whatever by having price increases or penalty fees or things like that. There was a really big push in getting customers away from human interaction. And that was, in our opinion, the result of banks looking at spending time with customers as costing money. So if you look at spending time with customers as costing money, then logically you need to find ways to spend less time with customers. Unfortunately, when you do that, if you migrate customers only to alternative channels, if I'm interacting with my bank only through an ATM, an internet bank, a mobile bank, a call center, all banks start to look the same. And therefore, I become more price sensitive and more sensitive to competitive offers and so on. So it kind of it puts the price sensitivity on a turbocharge when we start doing that. So one of the things that we always do is we say migrating customers to alternative channels for things that they can do on their own, services, transactions, and so on. That's interesting because it lowers the cost for you and it allows you to pass on some of that economy to the customers. However, at the same time, we need to use those relevant reasons for contact to bring customers back in. So if we can identify in a customer's behavior certain things that allow us to see who they are or group them together with certain people and invite them to some kind of an event for creating your family budget, an event for understanding savings, an event for retirement planning, bringing people together for, having an event for the top 10 things that are forgotten when people are buying a new home. All kinds of different things like that would be a relevant reason to bring people back into the bank branch, have some normal contact with them, human interaction, personal contact, and open up that discussion to learn more about their life. It's very difficult to learn about a person's life if they're using an ATM. It's much more, it's much easier to learn about their life if we're having a conversation with them at some event. And these events really don't cost that much. There are a lot of banks that are starting to do these. They realize that they have unused real estate in the evenings, and they can move forward. So, for banks that have already migrated their customers to alternative channels and are seeking ways to increase contact, events, webinars, whether they're live events or webinars, are a very interesting way to open up contact with people as a first step.
Great. Thank you, Michael. We have a few more that have come in.
Wow.
I know. How do your ratings compare to the J.D. Power survey ratings?
You know, a lot of times we're all over the place on that. It's interesting. We've had a number of clients that they say, well, gee, you know, we score really high on customer satisfaction, we score really high on NPS, and yet we're consistently losing customers to a cheaper provider, or we're losing customers because they're mad about a branch closure, or something like that. And one of the things that we find is sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes the other ratings don't always have a direct tie to customer behavior in the future, and they don't always have a direct tie to financial performance. Where ours, we're usually about 90 to 95% spot on with customer behavior and the scores. So the way that people rate the strength of their relationship is exactly the way that they rate, or is exactly the way that they perform in terms of their loyalty, the number of products they have, the balances they use, do they consider this their primary bank, and so on. So usually if somebody's rating the relationship strength score high, the NPS, customer satisfaction, net advocacy rating scores will also be high. But we've run across a number of situations where people are rating net promoter score, net advocacy rating, customer satisfaction very high, and our relationship score will be very low. And that's usually where we identify the problems. So these people are satisfied with the products that they own, but there's no relationship outside of the contractual relationship, which makes them very susceptible to competitive offers if those offers are a lower price, a better offer, a more convenient location, or so on.
Great. And we have one more question for you, Michael, but one question has also come in about accessing the recorded playback. And just for all attendees and everybody who's registered and was not able to join today, we will be sending via email a link to the recorded playback within 24 hours of today's session. So I just wanted to make that announcement. And then finally, the last question, Michael, how can a bank transform into experiential innovation but not cross over regulatory guidelines of treating all customers the same? Very good question.
Excellent question. You know, I just met with the financial regulator here in Nevada last week because I was very interested in this. We were talking with a bank client here, and they said, "Oh, you know, all of this stuff that you're proposing is all good and it's touchy-feely, but we have regulators to deal with." And so I said, all right, I need to go meet with the regulators and figure out what it is that we're proposing that is so off the charts. Because what we're proposing is understanding your customers, understanding what they're trying to achieve, helping them to achieve their goals, helping them to act more financially responsible, and so on and so on. So when I explained, you know, the methodology and the things that we do to the financial regulator, he said, this is exactly what banks should be doing. They should be spending more time to get to know their customers. They should be understanding exactly who they are and what they're trying to achieve and so on. Now, let me expand that in a different direction, because one of the things that I had a local bank here say to me as well is they said, how can you justify spending that amount of money? Because there's a cost in having all of these face-to-face interactions with customers. So how can you justify spending that amount of money with customer segments that bring a very low revenue per customer per year? So for example, it's fairly easy to justify sitting down with somebody for an hour and a half once a quarter if they're mass affluent and above. If you've got a VIP client who's in your private bank, of course you're going to take that person out to golf and dinner and put together a financial plan for them, and so on. And one of the things that we always say is the nature of the activity can remain the same, but based on the potential revenue from different segments, we can go through what we call a cost balancing exercise. So, and the needs of those customers change based on the segment as well. So if I'm a lower income family with a household income of $20,000 a year, I'm not really focused on retirement planning. What I need is somebody to help me figure out my family budget, somebody to help me get out of all these really high-cost credit products that I've used, like title loans and payday loans and things like that, and get me into something where I understand my budget and I'm able to start saving for certain things instead of using credit, so that I can put my family on a more financially disciplined level. If I'm a middle market family, I have a very different set of needs. If I'm an upper market family, I have a different set of needs. So where I might, for example, with a private banking client, sit down with them and educate them individually on a particular topic, maybe with a middle income segment, I might invite 20 people to a group workshop on that topic, which lowers my cost for each individual person. The activity remains the same, but the cost of that activity is spread out across a larger group of people. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, absolutely. And that's all the questions that we have for you, Michael. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and to Michael Ruckman also for the fantastic presentation. And again, everybody will get a copy of the playback link sent to them within the next 24 hours. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.